It was just before the Passover, and I thought Jesus would stay back in Bethany for the feast. But he insisted that we return to Jerusalem. "Go into the city," he said. "A friend of mine will show you a large upper room, furnished and ready." Strange. Peter and I rounded a corner, and there, coming out of a narrow alley, was a man we didn't know. But he looked at us as if we were expected. He gave us the key and told us to help ourselves. So we made preparation for the Seder meal. Peter went to the market to get the herbs, the matzah and the wine. Herbs to remind us of the bitter slavery of our ancestors in Egypt. Matzah bread, not given time to rise, as our forefathers hurried away from their chains. And the wine, red wine, like the blood of the little lambs that marked the door frames of the Exodus. Like the blood placed on the altar, reminding us that freedom is not without sacrifice. It was the same meal as every other year of my life, with my parents and grandparents, and for these last few years with Jesus. I roasted the lamb myself this time. Peter is no good at such things. He barely got all that was needed from the market. He was too busy arguing over the price of olive oil with the merchants to pay attention to his list. Jesus and the rest of the brothers arrived right on time for a change. The sun was setting as they came through the door, and the smell of the fresh spring evening was only outdone by the smell of the lamb on the fire, if I do say so myself. Everyone was their rowdy, regular selves. Simon was arguing politics with Nathaniel. Thomas was on some philosophical rant about what can be known or not known. Judas was dark and brooding, maybe more than usual, come to think about it. James came over to sniff at the lamb, convinced that I had ruined it. He took a taste and gave me a smile, the proud smile he flashed when we were kids, and he tousled my hair like the time I finally mastered the throwing of the net from the bow of our father's boat. And Jesus was uncharacteristically solemn. Oh, that mysterious dancing light was in his eyes, to be sure, but he seemed so burdened. When we gathered around the table to eat, I understood why. He began with the Kiddush.
And there was evening, and there was morning, the sixth day. The heaven and earth were finished, and all their array. On the seventh day, God finished the work that God had been doing, and God ceased on the seventh day from all the work that God had done. And God blessed the seventh day and declared it holy, because on it God ceased from all the work of creation that God had done. Blessed are you, Adonai our God, sovereign of all, creator of the fruit of the vine. Blessed are you, Adonai our God, sovereign of all, who finding favour with us, sanctified us with the law. In love and favour, you made the holy Sabbath our heritage as a reminder of the work of creation. As first among our sacred days, It recalls the exodus from Egypt. You chose and set us apart from the peoples. In love and favour, you have given us your holy Sabbath as an inheritance. Blessed are you, Adonai, whose blessing Sabbath. Blessed are you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of all, who brings forth the bread from the earth.
He stopped, and I thought he would cry. Then he spoke, barely a whisper. I tell you the truth, one of you will betray me. The entire table went to pieces, as you might imagine, and Jesus did little to explain or to comfort us, until he took a slab of bread in his hand, he broke it into pieces and handed it to us and said,
This is my body. Eat it and remember me.
the bread was still stuck in my throat and questions stuck in my mind when he raised the chalice and said much the same.
This is my blood that is poured out for many. Drink it. Remember me.
The red wine, like the blood of the little lambs that marked the doorframes of the Exodus, the blood placed on the altar, reminding us that freedom is not without sacrifice. For the longest time, we just sat around staring at each other, confused. The munching of bread and our own pounding pulses were the only sounds that filled our ears. Finally, Jesus broke the silence, cutting the tension as he led in singing an ancestral psalm.
I love the Lord because my voice and prayers he did hear. I, while I live, will call on him, who bowed to me his ear. Of death the cords that sorrows did about me compass round. The pains of hell took hold on me. I grief and trouble found. Upon the name of God the Lord then did I call and say, Deliver thou my soul, O Lord. I do thee humbly pray. God merciful and righteous is, yea, gracious is our Lord. God saves the meek. I was brought low. He did me help afford. O thou my soul, do thou return unto the quiet rest? For largely, lo, the Lord to thee his bounty hath expressed. For my distressed soul from death delivered was by thee. Thou didst my mourning eyes from tears, my feet from falling free. In the land of those that live will walk the Lord before. I did believe, and therefore I spake. I was afflicted sore. I said, when I was in my haste, that all men liars be, what shall I render to the Lord for all his gifts to me? I'll of salvation take the cup. On God's name I will call. I'll pay my vows now to the Lord before his people all. Dear in God's sight in his saints' death, thy servant, Lord, am I, thy servant sure, thine handmaid's son, my bands thou didst untie. Thank offering I to thee will give, and on God's name will call. I'll pay my vows now to the Lord, before his people all. With the courts of God's own house, within the midst of thee, O city of Jerusalem, praise to the Lord give ye.
We followed Jesus from the upper room to Gethsemane. It wasn't far, a mile or so. It would have been closer had we have crossed the temple grounds, but Jesus seemed to want nothing more to do with the temple. So we twisted our way through the upper city, an alley here, a sidewalk there, until we made our way into that blessed olive grove. The rabbis say the trees in Gethsemane are as old as Abraham. I don't know. How could anything be that ancient? I do know that Jesus loved that place. We went there often to pray, to listen to his stories, to get away from the crowds. On that night, that dark Thursday night, Gethsemane smelled grassy, like summer, though only the blooms were first budding in the old trees. The men settled in a comfortable spot, while Peter, my little brother John, and myself pressed deeper into the canopy with Jesus. He was driven on this night, as serious as I'd ever seen him. He turned to me once and said,
James, my soul is drowning in grief. Please pray for me and keep watch.
But keep watch? For what? I thought. There was so much I didn't understand. Finally, he pulled away from us and seemed to collapse at the trunk of one of those primordial trees, his body twisting like its branches, in agony. I tell you, I was terrified for him. But stronger than my confusion and fear was my exhaustion. Peter and little John fell fast asleep as soon as we knelt to pray. I can't blame them. They had awakened early, gone ahead to Jerusalem and prepared the Passover meal for the rest of us. So I know they were tired. I finally dozed off myself. All that red wine, heavy conversations, the night as thick and dark as the grave. What can I say? I fell asleep. Jesus came and gave us all a swift kick where we napped.
Could you not keep watch for just 1 hour?
There was such pain in his voice, stronger than disappointment. The man was desperate. He returned to his prayers, and I could hear him speak of God's will and suffering and betrayal. It caused me to return to his words from the dinner table. One of you will betray me. Who? Not us, not we three, not Andrew. He's the most thoughtful man in the bunch. Philip? Of course not. Matthew? Maybe. He did work for the Romans for a season, but he seems so happy to be free from them now. Then it struck me. Judas. Where was Judas? He had been in the upper room. I was sure of it. He sat right there at Jesus' side, but I couldn't remember him on our walk to the garden. Was he back in the back of the line? Had he lost his way in the dark? Maybe he paused to count the coins that he was prone to do. It was then that I heard his voice in the distance. This way, just a little further, almost there, he was saying. And then there were other voices, many voices. As I turned to wake Peter and John, there Jesus stood, his sorrow now replaced with a steely determination that was as frightening to me as my confusion had been. Judas arrived leading a company of angry men. They had arrest warrants stamped with the seal from the high priest. They were armed with swords, spears, and torches, dressed as a conquering army going into battle. We huddled behind Jesus like frightened sheep, waiting for him to strike them down. Judas stepped forward, his face illuminated by the flickering torch, and the suspense only heightened. "Rabbi," he said, and he kissed Jesus on the cheek. Jesus, with a haunting, knowing gaze, fixed Judas in his sight, and with a look of pity or compassion or distress, said gently,
My friend, do what you must do.
Chaos descended. Those men fell on Jesus like predators on prey. All the disciples scattered like spooked birds. And yes, I ran away. I ran as hard as those old legs could carry me, all the way back to Bethany. I didn't know what happened until morning, but by morning it was too late.
It was the darkest night of my life. And believe me, I've been through some bad nights. There was that trip to Capernaum, a trip filled too much wine and not enough fishing. I was drunk for a week and I felt dead for another. In Tiberias, I spent an awful night in jail for fighting with the local magistrate. Heavens, what a disaster that was. And of course, there's always that night where I met Jesus on the Sea of Galilee. I've plied through those waters since I was a lad, for more than 40 years. And I've never been through such a storm. It descended on us double time. And as try as we might, I knew we were doomed. All 12 of us were doomed. But then a phantom, or so it seemed, came crossing across the water. And I thought it was Hades coming to take me for all my sins. But it was Jesus. I didn't believe it at first. Who could believe such a thing? So I called out to the Spirit, "If it is you, then bid me to come to you on the water." And he answered, "Come on then." 3 simple words. I threw a leg over the starboard side to go to him. Almighty, I knew I was crazy. But better to try your hand or your foot at walking on water than to go down without a fight. I say, Andy, my brother, he grabbed fast to my shirt tail. And speaking of home and our mother, and begging me not to play the fool. Well, I've been a fool for most of my life. That's nothing new. So I started across the water to Jesus. And he saved me in that storm. He saved us all. And that's what made that one of the darkest nights of my life. That night, I believed in this man. Actually, more than that, I loved this man. Like nothing else that I ever wanted. And I wanted to stand with him when he needed me the most. And I told him. I told everyone.
Peter, the devil will grind you into the dust tonight. Before tomorrow, before the rooster crows, you will deny that you even know me.
I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe he'd say such a thing. And he has said some sharp things to me over the years, but this, and in front of everyone. No, not me. Let everyone else who would sink with the ship. Haven't I proven that I will go further than anyone? Haven't I proven that I will go to the wall, to death if necessary? No, sir. Simon Peter does not go gently into the dark. But I did. God helped me, and he did. After Judas handed Jesus over, I resisted. I pulled out my sword and started swinging with all my might. And Jesus just told me, put the sword away. He said it with such a force that I just dropped the thing. I never went back for it, and I just ran away. Yet I found my courage and hurried to the home of the high priest, where I knew they would take him. I went and I huddled outside. I was there waiting. I was there listening. I was there watching. Then they bottled me up. My comrades around the courtyard fire.
Hey you! Yes you! You are the Nazarene! I've seen you with him!
Said this little servant girl, this little nosy little nibby. I don't know what you're talking about, I barked before I even knew what I was saying. Then another said, yes, I'm certain I've seen you with Jesus. You two are from Galilee, and your accent gives it away. And I was terrified of being arrested. So I even said, a bit more forcefully this time, heavens no. I would never be caught with such a fool as that silly carpenter. But it wasn't enough. They ganged up on me. They interrogated me. They cornered me. Until finally I flipped and I thundered. Damn you all, and damn this Jesus. I tell you, I have never ever met the man. Jesus was just inside the courtyard door. I could see him just standing there. The accused, shackles on his wrists like he was some kind of insurrectionist. And just as the rooster crowed, he turned and he looked at me. Not unlike the way he gazed upon Judas in the garden. Whether or not he heard me cursing or that flaming chicken crying, it was no matter. He knew. He knew. And so did I. As fast as I could, I'm ashamed to say, I left that place. I'd like to say I cried myself to sleep that night. I wept many tears. That much is for sure. But no sleep came to me that night. I don't know if I would be able to sleep again. It was indeed the darkest night of my life.
James and a few of the others crashed through the door. It must have been about midnight. They were trembling with fear, breathless, unable to speak. Never have I seen men so shaken. Lazarus and I did our best to calm them, while Martha put a pot of sackful on the fire to warm their bones. It took several minutes for them to be able to explain what had happened. And even then, it was too unbelievable to accept. Jesus? What? Arrested? Judah? A traitor? The disciples scattered and on the run. That's when I knew I too had to run, all the way to Jerusalem to see things for myself. I grabbed my coat and headed for the door. Then Martha stopped me. Mary, please don't go, she said, as loving as a mother. The night is late and the roads are filled with dangerous men. I gave her a smile, the kind of smile that said what needed not to say. I had spent most than one night with a dangerous man, and now the one man who had shown me how to live differently, the man who had changed my heart and my life, was in trouble. I would not sit idle by if there was something, anything I could do. So I covered the miles from Bethel to Jerusalem along the same road the fleeting disciples had just taken, as fast as I could run. Along the way, I thought of a few of our times with Jesus, Martha, Lazarus, and me. There was that dinner party years ago and began my conversion. Oh, Martha was saving away in the kitchen. She always been the good daughter, and I knew I should have helped more. What with the dishes running onto the floor and the scorpion threatening to burn. But I couldn't push myself away from Jesus. He knew things. He knew God. He understood people. He understood me. And he showed me that I could know and be loved by God. Then there was the time Nazareth died. It started out as a cold or was he thought? But the poor boy was gone in a week. Jesus came too late to heal him, and we couldn't understand why. Why? And yet it all became crystal clear when he had the body embalmed and brought Nazareth back to life. Then there was yesterday, just yesterday, another dinner party with Martha cooking and Nazareth laughing at the table as full of living as ever. I was moved with such gratitude for it all that I retrieved the bottle of oil from my room and anointed Jesus with it. That's when I knew I had changed, because that bottle was my escape hinge. You see, I required it with the money I made over all those years in the brothels and down by the sea. Oh, it cost me much more than money. I was going to sell it and start a new life somewhere else, in Cairo, Alexandria, or even Rome. But Jesus gave me a new life right here, so I thought he should have it. I arrived at the high priest's house and met Peter running away from the courtyard. I tried to stop him and talk to him, but he bulldozed along, heaving with tears. I walked quickly to a back door where I knew I could peep inside without being detected. I knew the way. I knew that door because I'd been there, this home before, with my previous occupation. Though no one living there would ever admit it. Looking inside, I had sniffed, scuffed that nose in my throat. Though it's doubtful I would have been heard, the Sadducees and the priests were hoiling in bloodthirst. "Take him to Pilate," they were screaming. "He is a blasphemer and doesn't deserve to live." They spat on him. They smacked him, kicked him to the ground. They dragged him around the floor by the hair of his head. And I wept and wept. As the temple guards took Jesus away, I saw his blood scattered on the floor. Strangely, it looked exactly like the blood of the little lambs that marked the door frame of Exodus, like the blood placed on the altar, reminding us that freedom is not without a sacrifice.
Were you there when they dined there with the Lord? Were you there when they dined there with the Lord? Oh, sometimes it causes me to tremble, tremble, tremble. Were you there when they dined there with the Lord?
Did you pray there in the garden with the Lord? Did you pray there in the garden with the Lord? Oh, sometimes it causes me to tremble, tremble, tremble. Did you pray there in the garden with the Lord?
Did we deny the Lord before the rooster crowed? Did we deny the Lord before the rooster crowed? Oh, sometimes it causes me to tremble, tremble, tremble. Did we deny the Lord before the rooster crowed?
Were you there when the lamb's blood hit the floor? Were you there when the lamb's blood hit the floor? Oh, sometimes it causes me to tremble, tremble, tremble. Were you there when the lamb's blood hit the floor?